Trump is in his fourth month, everyone, of leading the Republican presidential race. At the top of the hour, we broke the news that he's got new high marks, and his popularity may be preventing other candidates from breaking out of the pack. One of those candidates, former Governor Mike Huckabee, joins me now. Governor Huckabee, good to have you on the program. Welcome to the Intelligence Report.
Thank you, Trish.
So let me ask you first your reaction here to this news that Trump is once again ahead in the polls. What is it that he has tapped into? Why is it that he is resonating so much right now, Governor?
Well, Trish, one of the things he's doing, he's saying publicly at the podium a lot of things people say when they're together with their close, intimate friends, and people are kind of refreshed that he's just going out there and just saying it, and they like that. Now, does that translate into a victory when it actually comes time to vote? We'll see. It may be. But I think in the meantime, this is like any kind of political race, and I've been doing this for 25 years, second time to run for president. So, you know, the thing that I know that a lot of people like this, maybe haven't experienced.
I mean, you've been in politics a while. Have you ever seen anything like this? I mean, you point out it's your second time through this. Has anything taken off quite like this before?
Well, in a way, you might say Fred Thompson, he didn't have the sustaining effort. Rick Perry, 4 years ago, had an extraordinary launch. But no, we haven't seen anything quite like this where a candidate is as blunt as Donald Trump, says things that the pundits will just sort of roll over and say, well, that's it, he's finished. And the pundits are wrong. So let me just pose this. If the pundits are as wrong about how he was going to disappear, is it not possible that they're wrong about who's up, who's down, and who's going to be up when it comes time to vote? Because that's what it counts.
For sure. I mean, the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day.
Trish.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, but here's something I could point out. One time I'll get a poll, they'll say, Governor, looks like you're down. Well, this morning the CNN poll came out, has me tied for fourth place. So now the headline ought to be, Huckabee surges in latest poll. So this is something that keeps going on.
Well, it's early in the game, and I'll give you that. It is early in the game. Let me ask you about this whole Trump versus Bush. You pointed out that he's saying the things that other people just don't say. And, you know, a good Republican isn't necessarily going to go after W the way Donald Trump just did. When you see that unfolding, what are you thinking? I mean, is he right? Is he right to point out that 9/11 happened under W's watch 9 months after he was already president?
No, I think it's nonsense to in any way even intimate, even remotely, that George Bush has anything to do with the fact that we had a 9/11 attack. That's as ridiculous as saying that George Bush had something to do with Hurricane Katrina. A president responds to the issue, but he can't always predict them, and he certainly can't always prevent them.
Could he have prevented those people from being in the country? Bill Clinton could have done something. With some kind of better illegal immigration program, a crackdown on illegal immigration that would have prevented those terrorists from doing what they did?
It's arguable, but you could say that Bill Clinton had been president 8 years before. George Bush had only been president for barely 8 months. So was it all his fault that in 8 months he hadn't completely solved that problem? Look, I just think that it's not a valid argument to make. You know, and he's trying to kind of walk it back in a gentle way. But let me say this. Not George, but Jeb Bush and Donald Trump are going at it right now. Look at this as a NASCAR race. They're up in the front, and they're, you know, bumping each other's cars. My main goal is stay out of their way. Don't get bumped by their cars. If they keep bumping into each other, they both could leave the track. That leaves an opening for the rest of us. Do you like Trump? I mean, if he were to become the Republican nominee, would you back him, Governor? Of course. You bet I would. Look, Donald Trump would be a far better president than any of the Democrats I saw on that stage. They want to take this country so far left, raise taxes so high, just destroy business, destroy jobs. It would be devastating to the country. They don't have a confidence in the military. So would I support Donald Trump? Of course I would. I think Donald Trump could be a fine president. So I don't have any, you know, issues or heartburn that Donald Trump is in the race. I think I'd be a better president because I've got some governing experience. And I do think the presidency is a little more intense than an entry-level political job. Yeah, you know, he would say, well, I got CEO experience, which is something that no one else really, other than Carly Fiorina on that stage has. You know, but Trish, let me point out, being a CEO of a private business, very different than being CEO of government. I've been CEO of a nonprofit, a private business, and government. And I can tell you there's big differences in all of them. And the biggest differences have to be that when you're in a private business, if there's somebody that's not working well, you just up and fire their rear ends.
Sure.
But when you're the CEO of the government, how do you fire Congress? How do you fire the hundreds of thousands of bureaucrats?
I'm sure a lot of people would like to, but you're absolutely right. You get all those constituencies. I was saying it earlier that you got to appease, and it's a challenge. That's where some of the political experience does come in handy. Let me ask you about another story in the news today. We've learned that Texas is going to be defunding Planned Parenthood via Medicaid. Do you think, Governor Huckabee, that other states are going to follow this example?
Well, I certainly hope so. We should never have been funding a private organization like Planned Parenthood to begin with. They don't really provide true medical services. They don't do one mammography exam anywhere in the country. They job those out. So it's a phony organization for them to pretend it's all about women's health. They're about abortions, and we shouldn't be funding Planned Parenthood, especially in light of what we now know that they do with baby body parts, sell them at auction as if they were parts to a car.
Yeah. Let me turn to something else that's very important right now, and that's how much money people have to live on in Social Security with their Social Security check. We saw recently that there would be no cost of living increase in Social Security in 2016, in part because there's just no inflation in the economy. Wages aren't going up, gas prices are going down, and so the government's saying, okay, everyone, you're not going to get an increase in 2016. You take issue with this.
Well, I do, because while all the Social Security recipients, that's 60 million of them in America, and another 10 million people, disabled veterans, for example, people who are disabled on SSI, they're not going to get a cost of living. But guess who is? Members of Congress. And, Trish, that just isn't right. A lot of the people on Social Security, in fact, a third of people on Social Security depend on it for 90% of their total income. And 70% of them depend on it for at least a third of their income. So we're talking about a real major part of how a lot of our most vulnerable people live.
Yeah, but prices aren't going up. I hear you. But if prices aren't going up, how do you justify increasing everybody's check? I mean, isn't that just more money out of mine to go pay for everybody else?
Well, only 3 times in 40 years has there not been a cost of living. Okay, if you can justify and say fuel prices are down, and by the way, we're going to keep them down next year. All right, that may be justifiable, but I want to point out, if that's justifiable for Social Security recipients not to get a pay raise, then for God's sake, Congress ought to shut their own one down.